Alright, so I guess I am back earlier than I expected, since Hoyoverse just released a new animated short for Skirk in Genshin Impact, and it is one of such gigantic proportions that it quite literally marks the start of a new era in the game moving forward. As for what the entailment and implications of this era are going to be, well, I will provide you with the full explanation. However, it is a bit complicated, so to ensure that all viewers are on the same page and on the same playing field, let us first go over the animated short itself and discuss the lore in it so that everyone has proper context. To kick things off, I want to start with the title of the animated short, which is Star Odyssey. This title is a clear reference to an Italian sci-fi movie released in 1979 by the Italian director Alfonso Brescia. And this movie is widely regarded as one of, if not the worst sci-fi movies in the history of human cinema. The characters in it are poorly written, the jokes are cheesy, the villains are generic, the robot companions look really bad, and the general assets of the movie were very clearly reused from the sets of other movies. And the reason behind why Star Odyssey the movie was so garbage is because it was never intended to be good to begin with. The movie was made as a cash grab during the era of the Star Wars hype, when the Star Wars franchise was brand new and it was dominating the entire world. So a bunch of different directors from a bunch of different countries decided to capitalize on the hype and cash in with their own garbage knockoffs. Star Odyssey is one of those movies. It is worth mentioning though that the director of Star Odyssey the movie, Alfonso Brescia, so on the same month, approximately 24 years after the passing away of the original Star Odyssey creator. Regardless, those of you who've got their thinking caps on are going to wonder, Dragon MJE, if Star Odyssey is so garbage, then why the hell is Hoyoverse referencing it for Skirk, which is one of their most anticipated characters ever in Genshin Impact? And to answer this quandary, all I have to do is provide you with a synopsis of the movie. So don't actually waste your time by watching it, trust me, it is really bad. It is even worse than the reviews that most people gave it. But the summary, which will sound very generous from me, goes as follows. Planet Earth in the distant future is going to be sold in an intergalactic auction to an alien tyrant called Kress. And this alien, this tyrant, will take the planet, subjugate all of its humans, and utilize them as slaves to exploit the resources of the planet for his own good. And a bunch of scientists, martial artists, and robots from Earth will band together in order to stop Kress and defeat his evil plan. This very concise summary of the movie's plot should sound eerily familiar to you, with certain themes not just in Genshin Impact but also in the rest of the Hoyoverse, hence why I say we are entering a new era of Genshin. Now, Kress the Tyrant, the main villain of Star Odyssey the movie, is very obviously, you can take a look at him right here, he is a very clear, cheap knockoff of much better villains from Star Wars, such as Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine, the Sith Lords. But in Genshin Impact, there are a few characters who perfectly fulfill the role of Kress, the Tyrant, who purchases Earth from an intergalactic auction and then exploits the planet's resources by enslaving the people and then forcing them to provide him with their resources. This includes minerals, includes water, and all energy, all of that stuff. The most obvious candidate for this role is going to be, well, the primordial one, since the Heavenly Principles, Phanis, the primordial one, is the character in Genshin who is most often associated with the moniker of Tyrant. As a matter of fact, the Heavenly Principles is on multiple occasions referred to as the tyrannical usurper. Keep in mind that this whole Star Odyssey spiel is most likely a coincidence which one of the writers at Hoyoverse, specifically in Genshin, came across and saw a little bit of similarities between the story of Star Odyssey and some of the things in Genshin, so they decided to loosely reference it in the animated short of Skirk. So don't take it too seriously beyond the very super general outline of the plot. Regardless, we can still try to have a little bit more fun with the plot, but I will do that once we are done with analyzing the trailer, so let's get into it. I almost wonder if the first slash is not... Later on you're gonna see Skirk slashing the screen in order to transition between timelines and scenes, I almost wonder if the first slash was done by Sortaloji, simply because this is supposed to symbolize the first moment he met Skirk, since after all, Sortaloji is the one narrating this entire trailer, or at least most of it. And I should say animated short, not a trailer. You can see here this is the voice of Sortaloji, and I want to very quickly show you Skirk's eye. She is most likely looking at the destroyed remnants of one of the moons, either the Eternal Moon or the Iridescent Moon. Could be the Iridescent Moon, however, we will see later down the line. So here Sortaloji references a bunch of information which you already know. These are the Descenders, which we learn about from René de Petrichor in Fontaine and Zandiq in Sumeru. Sortaloji tells Skirk that she is not yet worthy of the title of a Descender. However, the usage of yet implies that Skirk could potentially become one. She has the potential, and this might be one of the reasons why Sortaloji decided to save her. Oh, and needless to say, in case there's any confusion, this animated short is mostly symbolic. This is not referencing the moment Sortaloji saved Skirk right now. What you are looking at is Skirk recalling what Sortaloji told her back when he saved her. However, this scene right in front of you right now is not in sync with the moment when Sortaloji said these specific words. So, since Skirk is an alien to Tevat, and she does not yet possess the will to rival a world, she is considered a trespasser.
If your long journey makes you drift too far away.
And here we get our very first look into Tevat, the planet. Now, we have had many different sources, including Jacob Baker, the leader of the Narzis Ordo in Fontaine, telling us that Tevat is a planet. As a matter of fact, we have an even better source than Jacob. We have Neuvillette himself. The Dragon of Water, the Hydro Dragon Sovereign, tells Paimon and the Traveler at the end of Act 1 or Act 2, I believe it was Act 2 of Fontaine, that Tevat is in fact a planet. I think Caribert also repeats this whole sentiment in Bedtime Story, but regardless, we already have potentially three very reliable sources confirming that Tevat is not, well, at least the continent itself is on a giant planet and isn't itself the entire world of Genshin. Finally, though, we have a proper visual confirmation that Tevat is in fact situated on a planet. Of course, we don't know the name of the planet. It could be called Tevat, like Tevat may be the name of the continent and the name of the planet. But this minute detail aside, the reveal that we see in front of us, or the confirmation I should say, opens the door for a wide variety of different possibilities. The first and most obvious one in the future is that once we are done with the Tevat chapter, the one we are currently playing in right now with Dainsleif, we will move on to another continent on this planet. However, the fact that Tevat is located within a planet that is surrounded by the Primordial One's firmament, which we see right here, and then beneath the firmament we have the clouds, additionally opens the possibility for Genshin's next story to take place or involve the remainder of the Hoyoverse. So we are primarily talking about the Star Rail universe. And this is absolutely massive. Why is it massive? Because you guys have to remember that in Star Odyssey, which, disclaimer, I will repeat the disclaimer one more time, this is most likely a coincidence, a fun coincidence that the developers decided to reference. But if we try to have a little bit of fun, in Star Odyssey the movie, Cress, the tyrant, purchases Tevat or wins Tevat in a bid from an intergalactic auction. Who does these type of intergalactic auctions in Star Rail? Well, the first people I can think of are the IPC. So we are looking into a future where we might legitimately have the IPC and possibly even Diamond, who by the way is an emanator of Cliffoth, the Eon of Preservation. We are looking into a future where we might have those guys legitimately involved with Teyvat. But do not get what I am saying twisted. I don't expect, for instance, Aventurine and Topaz to suddenly show up in Teyvat out of nowhere. We might get other IPC characters who we have not yet seen in Star Rail but are part of the IPC organization itself. Since you guys have to remember that the Intergalactic Peace Corporation, the IPC, has many different branches, and the Stonehearts belong to Diamond, who only lead one specific branch in the IPC. But once again, I'm only having fun here, don't take this too seriously. It's just another possibility. I should also mention, bro, this frame has so much lore in it, it's insane. You see the star that is shining onto that? This star specifically, I want to know its name, because it is mentioned in Finale of the Deep Galleries, and specifically in the artifact piece, the feather piece, Finale of the Distant Pact, which is the one that recounts how the Voyager met the Dragon King Nibelung. And the Voyager, who inhabited Ajax the hero, whom Ajax, our Ajax the Fool, Tartaglia, is supposed to be his successor or spiritual successor. This Voyager that inhabited the original Ajax, she said that Nibelung's will, to her eyes, shone brighter than the sun itself. Now, this could mean that the Voyager has special eyes which perceive different things, or this could be metaphorical, where the Voyager saw Nibelung's will in her mind, in her dream, as she was drifting through space. But anyway, I think it's just a fun fact that you guys might want to know. Nibelung's will shines brighter than the sun of his own planet. Finally, in this frame, we can see the firmament of Teyvat that was created by the Heavenly Principles and the Primordial One. You can clearly see the digital influence on the firmament, along with the red outline symbolizing the power of the Primordial One. We know this because Renova and the Sustainer also use red. This is alchemical stuff that you do not need to worry about right now. The gist of what I am saying, though, is that we can finally see the influence of the Primordial One on the world. And I do have to say, the way this firmament is constructed makes me believe that the Primordial One put Teyvat within the confines of a pseudo-simulated universe. So think about it like this. What if this firmament is a capsule for a simulated universe, and the Primordial One enveloped Teyvat with this simulated universe in order to run a bunch of experiments on the planet with a predeterministic fate?
And if the dust and times to weigh you down.
This is very interesting because Skirk, I just noticed this right now, she is a mermaid. And this detail is important because Skirk is the master of Ajax, she is his teacher, and Ajax is a fisherman. As you guys probably know, fishermen and mermaids usually have a lot of stories together in mythology and fiction. I am sure many of you growing up have seen the stories of like pirates and fishermen interacting with mermaids in mythology, stuff like that. It's a very nice detail. However, usually the mermaids kill the fishermen. Regardless, in this situation, Skirk decided to teach Ajax.
Astray, if passing, it'll change you somehow.
So, Skirk falling into Teyvat in this scene is very reminiscent of how the twins, Aether and Lumine, reached Teyvat. This could be like symbolic of the idea that Skirk is close to being a descender, but not quite right there.
Let not this simple I must do. Be there
Unfortunately, I don't think they show us Furina's vision. And the reason I want to see if she has a vision is because that pretty much tells us the timeline. Yeah, they do not show it to us. I think this is before the Traveler, since Furina is taking the form of Focalors here, or trying to imitate her. We can tell by the hairstyle, by the way, in case you're wondering. Take a look.
Let not this simple I must do. Be there with
You can see that Farina is very clearly using her old hairstyle, which is the one where she imitates Fossilors. This could be maybe 100 years ago, maybe even less, 200 years ago, who knows? Something along those lines.
Simple, I must still be there with you. 見て、流れ星だ。え、どこに落ちたんだろう。
俺に勝ちたければ、俺の歩いた道を。
So this is our first look into the objective of Skirk. Her goal in Genshin's story, at least for now, is to defeat Surtalogy, which is really funny because Tartaglia's goal is, when I say Tartaglia, I'm of course talking about Ajax the Fool, our Ajax. His goal is to defeat his master Skirk, whom he sees as this very powerful warrior that could fight him with only one arm. And Skirk's goal is to defeat Surtalogy, which just shows the gap between Ajax right now and Surtalogy, because the woman whom Ajax sees as this impossible mountain which he has to climb is also herself seeing Surtalogy as this impossible mountain which she has to climb and ascend and overcome. It also speaks to the immense power of Surtalogy the Foul, one of the 5 sinners of Kandria.
Please not that I stay to wait. Please not that I stay to see.
だが、そこにお前は属すな。
Once again, this is Surtalogy reminding Skirk that she does not belong to Tevat. She is neither a descender nor a native to the planet. She is just a trespasser, an outlander who is trespassing on the world by virtue of Surtalogy allowing her to be here.
お前の家もない。
私、アリスよ。旅の人。
So, Skirk met Alice. This opens up a bunch of possibilities, but those are possibilities that we can discuss in other proper lore theories, not in this video where we are analyzing the immediate lore in front of us.
おしゃべりしましょう。
These are Deshret runes, so the Deshret runes in the desert. And yep, we can see the... Oh, okay, so this is before the Traveler came and saved the desert or solved the ley line disorder in the desert, because we can see the storm around the mausoleum of King Deshret, which implies that Skirk's journey did take place before the Traveler. Now, how long before the Traveler, we do not know. This also helps us determine when this animated short was taking place with Furina in Fontaine, so it's probably before she met the Traveler and before Fossilors died. Which is interesting because we have to remember that Nouvellette met Skirk at the end of Masquerade of the Guilty. Therefore, both Nouvellette and the Traveler should be aware of Skirk. But in this specific scene, he does not know who she is. So this might explain why he does not recognize the falling star in the sky.
どこに落ちたんだろう。
What I personally worry about, though, is that all of these scenes, like the desert one, the Fontaine one, and the Alice one, are all out of sync, which is a very distinct possibility, by the way. But if we choose to take things at face value, the whole animated short should be before the Traveler.
どこに落ちたん
Or at least before the Traveler solved certain issues in Tevat, like the Mausoleum of King Deshret and like the Fontaine Archon quest. So here we have Dainsleif asking Skirk who taught her how to wield a blade like this. The reason should be very obvious. I have already discussed it on this channel many times before. Dainsleif is most likely going to be the final boss of Genshin Impact, or at least the Tevata chapter of Genshin Impact. We know this thanks to the Tevata Travail trailer, and at the very end of the story, Dainsleif challenges the Traveler in the Sea of Flowers at the end of the world. Dainsleif right now is on a quest to hunt down the 5 sinners of Kandria, and presumably, this is my own assumption, this is not confirmed, presumably arrest the power they stole from the Prince of Light. Does he actually want their power? We do not know, but we do know he is hunting them down. That much is confirmed. This is interesting because the implication here is that Skirk and Dainsleif already met and already fought. I am now very much interested in seeing how this will go in the upcoming 5.7 story quest for Skirk and our conquest with Dainsleif. I hope that Dainsleif will tell us more about Surtalogy the Foul. Also, since we are discussing Surtalogy the Foul, I do want to ask you guys this. Do you guys think that Surtalogy will be the first sinner whom we fight in Genshin, or will he be the last? Because in my opinion, Surtalogy is either going to be the first sinner based on all of this exposition we are getting about his overall lore right now, or Surtalogy is going to be the last sinner we fight, and he's most likely the strongest of the 5 sinners. This is, of course, Skirk teaching Ajax. This is young Ajax calling her master and telling her to fight him with her full power. Recently, Hoyoverse released a little bit of lore on Skirk on their X or Twitter page, and over there we learn that Skirk does care about Tartaglia and she holds back against him in order not only to effectively teach him the art of combat, but also in order to not hurt him. She does not want to do that. Which is quite cute and quite telling on Skirk's character. She is not an evil person. She is someone with morals and honor, I suppose. What you are seeing right here is a very clear and obvious reference to Unlimited Blade Works, which is from the Fate series. If you guys don't know, Hoyoverse really likes the Fate series, and they reference them in a multitude of their works. If you don't know who the Fate characters are, just watch Fate Zero and then watch Fate Unlimited Blade Works. It's that simple, and then you can watch Fate Heaven's Feel. All the other stuff are not necessary to watch, you can just check them out on the side. However, I do recommend that after you finish Fate Zero and Unlimited Blade Works, that you check out Lord Ilmiloy, the series about him, because that series gives you a good idea of what side characters in the Fate universe are doing. And then you can watch Heaven's Feel, the movie trilogy. And if you want to play as Emiya and Saber, whom this very specific Skirk scene is referencing, then you can go to Star Rail in Honkai Star Rail, since those two characters are going to be playable in the Fate collab over there, and I am very excited for their release, along with the greatest hero, Phynon of Ides Elysia. TLDR, this scene is referencing 2 characters from Fate who are going to be playable in Honkai Star Rail. And here we have Skirk standing in front of the drawing of Asmodee, or the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles, which the Traveler makes to Paimon at the end of the opening cutscene in Genshin Impact. Of course, this implies that Skirk shows up in this location shortly after the Traveler started his journey into that, because you have to keep in mind, logically, if this was a long time after the Traveler started his journey, or sorry, I should say their journey, since Aether and Lumine are both the MCs, depending on who you choose, the waters of the ocean or the sea would have washed the sand away or reorganized the sand particles. So this is very clearly very shortly after the Traveler began their journey, hence why we see the mausoleum of King Deshret with the sandstorm still around it, and also hence why we see Furina still imitating Focalor. We of course have Skirk standing. This is a very symbolic scene. I'm going to explain it briefly. She's standing on top of the sea, and above her is the false sky. In Genshin Impact, especially in the book Perenheri, and in Arlecchino's weapon, Crimson Moon's Semblance, and also in a bunch of other sources, but primarily those two I mentioned, the ocean in Genshin, or sorry, the Sea of Stars in Genshin, the space, is likened to the ocean, metaphorically likened. But this metaphorical likening is supposed to reference another movie which Genshin takes inspiration from, real inspiration, not like coincidental one, and it is called Angel's Egg. It is a short OVA movie created by Mamoru Oshii. Now, if you don't know what Angel's Egg is, don't worry about it. I'm just explaining to you where the reference comes from. And in Genshin, space is likened to the sea and the ocean by virtue of being called the Sea of Stars. The song is very good too. Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna probably skip Skirk because there are way too many good characters coming out in Nodekrai, and also the greatest hero Phainon of Ides Elysia will come out very soon in Star Rail. All in all, as you guys can see from my entire discussion of this video, Genshin Impact is starting to reference Honkai Star Rail a lot. And not in subtle ways either, because we can see characters like the Voyager, and now even the Primordial one, since we know more about them. They appear to be characters who share certain similarities with Aeons in Honkai Star Rail. Furthermore, since Skirk herself is an alien from outside Teyvat, the implication here is that either she comes from another world in the imaginary tree of Honkai, or the entire Hoyoverse is just within the Star Rail universe, which would be a slight retcon, and Genshin is just another planet within the Hoyoverse, or within the Star Rail universe, and we get to play this planet. Similar to what we do in Honkai Impact 3rd, where you play through the story of Kiana, and by playing through Kiana's story, at least in the part 1 of Honkai Impact 3rd, you get to experience her own world. While in Zenless Zone 0, you get to play and experience in the world of New Eridu, stuff like that. However, in Star Rail, instead of playing in these individual worlds, like the world of Teyvat, the world of New Eridu, and the world of Honkai Impact 3rd, you get to play in the entire universe of the Hoyoverse and experience many different worlds very quickly. I understand why a lot of people might be hesitant and why they might not like the fact that Genshin is entering into the Honkai Star Rail phase, but I ultimately think this is a good thing if it is done properly. Obviously, though, I am not suggesting something absurd, like, for example, the Xianzhou Luofu and Honkai Star Rail's Astral Express with the Nameless suddenly show up on Teyvat out of nowhere, and then we get a whole storyline with them. I am more so suggesting involvements from higher tier types of characters, like, for example, the Aeon of Remembrance Fuli. They could be involved with Teyvat by proxy of the Voyager, since the Voyager has a lot of similarities with the Emanators and the followers of Fuli. Other Aeons or Emanators of other Aeons who may be involved in Teyvat could include the Primordial one, it could include the Third Descender, stuff like that. I hope no one mistakes what I am saying into thinking that I am advocating for absurd storylines. I don't expect a random character like Shui Yi, for example, from the Xianzhou Luofu to suddenly be walking around in Teyvat and be playable in Teyvat. That's not what I am saying. Or I should stop saying Teyvat and start saying Genshin Impact because maybe the planet is called something else. But regardless, I do not expect random characters from Star Rail to start showing up in Genshin. What I expect instead is that we get to learn more about greater powers in the Hoyoverse, like the Aeons, by proxy of certain Genshin characters who may be emanators of those Aeons. The Voyager is an excellent example. She is designed in such a way that her character is very much in line with the path of Fuli, the Remembrance. Now, I would not say that she is from the Garden of Recollection. I don't think she is. But her overall character is still in line with the Path of Remembrance and the Aeon Fuli. We also have the potentiality of Nanook, the Aeon of Destruction, being involved with Teyvat, possibly the IPC. Again, I am not saying that Jade and Kakavasha, Aventurine, and Topaz are suddenly going to show up in Genshin. However, we might, in the very distant future, once like the Teyvat chapter is resolved, we might get an emissary of Diamond. We might get another faction from the IPC getting involved with Teyvat, something along those lines. I think Skirk herself is a good example and a good demonstration of what I'm trying to say. because she is an outsider from Teyvat, but she is a very Genshin outsider. She is not a random outsider that suddenly showed up in the game. She is well integrated into the lore and has a reason to exist. The same also applies to the primordial ones. Since they came from beyond Teyvat, they are probably a very powerful emanator of some Aeon. Which Aeon? Well, I will get into it in the future. Don't worry about it for now. Regardless, I am looking forward to version 5.7. We are going to get a lot of lore, and we finally have a confirmation that Teyvat is a planet. As you guys can see, with this animated short, and with the upcoming version of Nodekrai and Snezhnaya as a whole, because Nodekrai is part of Snezhnaya, we are entering into Genshin's endgame. And now, we are not only finishing the Teyvat chapter, Hoyoverse are clearly getting ready to enter into the next phase of Genshin. And just like Tsai Hao-yu, the creator of Genshin Impact, and one of the founders of Hoyoverse, one of the founders of MiHoYo, said when he first revealed Genshin, they are preparing to start their own multiverse, which they call the Hoyoverse. We are seeing this in Star Rail, and we are starting to see it in Genshin. I think a lot of people are going to have a negative view on this integration, but if Hoyoverse does it properly, at least from how I am expecting it, then I do see the very extremely high potentiality of it being an overall net positive to their collective IPs. Regardless, that's going to be it from me for now. I am personally very much excited to see what's going to happen in Genshin in the future, and whether or not it will end up being integrated into Star Rail and the rest of the Hoyoverse. If not, then that's also fine. We'll see what they do. For now, though, thank you for watching. I've been My Name for now, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.